Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in. We're here.
We are. Welcome
I'm
back.
excited.
Another week. Here we go.
Yes. And today's topic is brought to you by the great Adam Luke.
Oh, well, thank you. Well,
Yes. Would you like to introduce it?
Yeah, I'll lay the groundwork. So this thought process came out of some sessions I've been having lately. And I wanted to have a greater conversation on it because I don't think we talk about it enough. So the title of today's episode is Growth on Hold, the Pitfalls of Picking a Partner Who Co-Signs Your Bullshit.
Love
Now,
it.
right now, I imagine you guys are like listening and you're like, ooh, what is this about? So what I do is, probably a third of the practice right now is all couples or individuals who are seeking relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is to sit down and do that initial assessment of like, what do you want in life? Let's build a silhouette out of the person that you want to have in your life or the relationship that you wish to have.
Yeah.
And we can be very articulate, very disciplined, very diligent on all the choices we make. And then this person will show up 2 weeks later, be like, so I'm in a relationship and it's all awesome. You meet her at church? No, I met her at Taboo, the gentleman's club. And it's like, again, bring the gospel wherever you wish, brother.
True. Yeah.
But I think that there's going to be some challenges in that. And I know that I just was very stereotypical with my response, but I've had the same thing with female clients of like, I want someone who's stable and safe. And instead I found a man on a pickleball court. So like, I don't know. Like,
I'm being reminded of some clients I've worked with. They did not end up together, but they did have an affinity for pickleball. So that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not against pickleball, nor do I think it's a poor lifestyle choice. I'm just saying it's interesting how we can sit in the therapy chambers at times and say, this is what I want for myself. And then I go out and I find someone who, man, they actually play really well with the worst parts of myself, what I'm willing to do to sort of abuse myself, whether it's alcohol, whether it's clubbing, whether it's whatever. It's all these, it doesn't match what I tell myself my heart needs.
And the way that I took it when you were bringing it up earlier was when we match. So that's one angle we're going on today. And then the other angle that I think that we had like chatted a little bit to like start with to lead into yours to kind of set the foundation is when you pick someone, and like obviously if you're listening to this, well, hopefully you're an adult. If you're a kid, shut this off. Like, this is not for you.
No.
You are an adult, you are of age, you're probably 20s to 50s or what have you, and you find yourself in your adult body looking at romantic partners, right? Like, who do I pick? Who would I want to end up with? Like you're saying, writing the list, writing the archetype. But there's something inside of you, whether that's your wounded inner child, your wounded inner teenager, right? Not the fully integrated self, but more of the self that is like, or the part rather that is like, oh, wouldn't this be so fun? The impulse, they're just hot, or I feel like they could hurt us in the same way that our childhood stuff did. Like, let's do it. And adult you is like, no. That's not smart. We're not going to go for them. But not everybody has adult them telling them that. And they're just like full bore, like balls to the wall. Let's do it. That's the partner I'm picking. And if you are not doing the conscious work to understand, sometimes there's that magnetic draw to somebody who does co-sign your BS because they're a match or a twin flame or soulmate, as we mentioned last episode, for the unhealed version of you or the wounded inner child. And like your wounded inner children are soulmates. That is not a healthy foundation for a relationship. So that's the angle when you first brought the title up that I took, which I do think sets the foundation for maybe one reason why people do pick a partner who is easier, quote unquote, or more gettable or won't challenge them in a way, because self-discovery and self-growth can be uncomfortable at times.
It should be, by definition. It should be uncomfortable. If you're finding yourself in a strong period of self-discovery and you haven't had any questions, you're really probably just on a trip. It's not necessarily going to last. The thing that sort of got me on this thought process, I actually had it happen years ago. I had a couple that I worked with that they both were individuals that were addicted to
Yeah.
substances.
Mm.
And so we did a lot of work individually on sobriety, right? And then what it got around to was, as a couple, they actually didn't have anything to connect on because the use was the thing that
Yes, I've worked with
started it.
couples
Like
like that.
like
Yes.
where it was like, hey, we were willing to hurt each other
Mhm.
with each other.
Mhm.
And so that was our primary thing. And when we actually realized that that was unhealthy and we didn't want to do that anymore, we recognized that we actually weren't compatible
Yeah.
because the versions we were sharing with each other were so disassociated and inebriated that
Yeah.
like we didn't actually show our real selves.
True.
And I think that that's what people stumble into now. When I bring up addiction, people are always like, "Oh, well, that's a hard line." Yeah, there's different things that we can become addicted to. Like I like the significant other that wants to go shopping with me or wants to go on all these trips with me or wants to do,
Mhm.
and we find ways to essentially have like disassociation partners more than like significant others.
Yeah, they're significant in certain parts of our life that we're not necessarily conscious to. They have a big
Mm,
pull, but they're not going to be that partner. And I think a lot of people define I remember joking about this with my mom a long time ago, calling like it's a more of a new age, quote unquote new age. I'm like
mm.
80. What if I'm not 80? I'm over here like the kids these days. That it's like a newer term to call it a partner rather than boyfriend, girlfriend,
Yeah.
significant other, fiance, what have you. Like
Hmm.
I've heard, and it's not only for relationships where both people are of the same gender. It's used as like this is how I describe the person's role in my life. I would like a
Mm,
teammate, a partner, like that. That's
yeah.
the purpose for it. But it's like, oh, my partner this, and my mom was like, you, that sounds like you're dating a woman. And I'm like, and so what if I was? Like, first of all, so what if I was? Second of all, that's how I thought of that
Your
person. So
mom.
whatever.
It's just like
Hilarious, right?
frozen.
Yes, right. The Catholic, she's like, don't say that out loud. And I'm like, okay, well, I did. So you would have hated me in college. Like, cat's out of the bag on that one. Yeah, literally, literally. Love that you had that there. Perfect timing. That's the episode, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap
Just,
it up there.
just so
No,
everyone
but
knows.
it's that title that you want a partner. Like
Yeah.
you want to have a relationship partner. You don't want somebody who wants, like we talked about last time,
Mm,
do they want to be someone's boyfriend more than they want a girlfriend? Do they want to
yeah.
be someone's wife more than they want to be married? Like
Mm,
you have to understand ideally that both adult parts of you are on the same page with wanting to
yeah.
be in a relationship and that you both are committed to self-growth, you both are committed
Mm,
to self-development. It's not that you shouldn't have hobbies in common. I think that's a
no.
great thing, or dissociative tendencies, but like we joked about last time too, you're probably not going to meet your soulmate at a bar while
True.
you're inebriated and be like, oh my god, they're the one, they're so enlightened. Like statistically also, just from the research, that's
Hmm.
very unlikely that you would meet somebody out doing that if that's not something you do regularly. And if it is,
Yeah.
and you're half asleep the whole relationship, or you're co-signing each other's bullshit because you're in a relationship with somebody where their real self can't come out, or it
Hmm.
can only come out under the influence,
Yeah.
that's not an authentic relationship. And many of the
No.
couples I've worked with who got, not that they had such use that they needed to get sober, but they chose to stop
Yeah.
using, they sometimes do not get along. Couples who one member of the couple gets pregnant and can't drink, and so they
Mm,
either agree to or implore their partner to stop drinking
yeah.
along with them, and they start to see like, oh, a lot of the deep
Mm,
talks or whatever we had were brought on by, smoking
yep.
weed or drinking or whatever it was. We don't actually have a lot in common without that. Or we healed.
Mm,
I worked with a lot of clients who came in knowing that they had codependent tendencies, or they bonded over that wounded childhood. We were both messed up in some way. I'm not saying
yep.
that. I'm quoting what they've said about themselves. To be
Yeah.
clear, I'm not judging. Like we're both, we had this torrid history. We're both messed up.
Mm,
Like you're the only one who understands me because so and so, your dad also abused
yeah.
you. That may not be. I want to be caveat. That may not
Absolutely.
be the foundation for a long-lasting, healthy in the sense that we're talking about, like
Yeah.
self-aware adult you picking another adult relationship rather than
Hmm.
it being like, oh, they won't leave me because they were wounded in a similar way and they know how that pain feels. It's really important that you don't bond only over drinking or codependency or some of those
Hmm.
vices, because when we go to therapy and we get
Yeah.
better, we don't often exhibit those same tendencies.
Mm,
And I've seen many couples consciously uncouple because they're like,
Yeah.
we've learned all that we needed to, and I'm actually not attracted to you anymore.
Yep.
That whatever, we're sober or we're not codependent, or I saw the purpose of you in my life for whatever, like we
Mm-hmm.
joked off air, like character development or growth. And now that that has occurred and it's been completed, I no longer
My
want to relate
character
to you in
arc
that
in your
way.
story
Yeah,
has run
yeah, it's
its.
concluded. I
Yeah.
am in I this chapter is closed. We're no longer in relation or in partnership because the lessons have been learned.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes people a while to learn those lessons if they're still masking or if they're still dissociating, and if you're not awake or aware of, oh, 14-year-old me actually loved
Mm,
that person. 30-year-old me, 35-year-old me, 40-year-old me would never put up with that bullshit. Like, what? And that's the trend I love on social media, that it's like the my husband would never, my wife would never.
mm-hmm.
Fill in the blank. My husband would never, whatever bullshit you're dealing with in your relationship currently. And then if that's true, then you leave. Like, truly, because if it's not going to change and the other
Yeah.
person's committed to not growing, what kind of relationship do you hope to have if they're like,
Yeah.
please sign this bullshit. You're like, I'm not doing that anymore. I need you to be a grown up. I need you to be an adult with me. And they're like, I don't want to. Like, I just want to go get drunk and play pickleball. And it's like, okay, well, you can do that, but we're also not going to be in a relationship.
Yep.
Well, I want it all. You don't get it all. As an adult, you and I know that. We
Yeah.
don't get it all, at least not all the time.
Well, yeah, we basically we get more frustrated the moment that we move into realizing that we no longer have ally in misery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we have to be aware of is absolutely all of us have traumatic stories that have popped into our lives, traumatic events that
Of
have
course.
happened. But we have to ask ourselves as we surround ourselves with concerts of support, are we actually looking for support or are we looking for an echo chamber? Because a lot of times
Yeah.
that relationship becomes the echo chamber. If I find someone else that you've always been different or you've always felt different or you've had people that have betrayed you that you've really trusted, and so we sort of trauma bond over the fact that we
Yes.
have like stories,
Yes.
and then we almost use each other almost as like anchors to prevent our movement farther in
Mm-hmm.
life because we now
Mm-hmm.
have someone that we can say, yeah, the world's always screwed me. Yep, it's always screwed us, and we never have to move.
Yep.
What is inevitable though is even as you delay growth, you can't stop growth.
Nope.
So
That's so true.
you guys continue to grow regardless. And
Mm-hmm.
so the natural differentiation happens. Even as you grow as fused as freaking possible, one of you gets big enough, you break off.
True.
And then all of a sudden, now you're stuck in this whole codependency loop
Yep.
where I'm extremely dependent on you making me feel like I am special. And the other
Yes.
one is sitting there saying, well, to do that means I have to stop myself from becoming the best version of myself.
Yes. Oh, it's the worst. The worst. But it's necessary because of the plot.
Yep.
Long
I
term.
love it.
It's true. It is. I really am resonating with what you're saying because I've lived through that before more than once, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I will say, when you're in that kind of relationship where you understand they do not want to grow, period, not
Mm-hmm.
just not grow with you, not learn, like they're so afraid maybe
Yeah.
or so committed to, I don't want to have to change. No one's ever forced me to change
Mm,
or awakened a
yeah.
desire to change in me before. I'd rather pick, what's the line, like the familiar hell than the unfamiliar heaven, something like
Yeah, the
that.
devil you
Yeah,
know instead of the
yeah,
devil you don't. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So it's like if I've never had to grow and I've still had
Mm,
whatever, a job, friends, family, significant others
yep.
ish, along the way, I don't need, is the thought. I don't need to grow because I'm not suffering in some way. Well, guess what? The
Mm,
best time to grow is not when you wait when you're suffering. The best time to grow is when you're not suffering
yeah.
because it's much easier. It's hard, but it's easier to grow when you're not like, I have to get out of this. I am miserable in this and I am
Yeah.
suffering. It's already exhausting to be suffering. Then you try to add
Mm,
growth onto that. So when you're in a relationship and you are under the auspices that this person's going to grow with you,
yeah.
or you are committed to self growth and you say that from the beginning, like, hey, I like whatever, reading books,
Mm-hmm.
listening to podcasts, going to therapy. If their therapist is a huge part of their life when they're first dating, that's something for the other partner to know. And like you're saying with the client
Yeah.
example, sometimes partners hear that and it's part of their archetype and they're like,
Yep.
that sounds like work. I don't really want to be held accountable to
I love the
grow.
work.
Never
Sounds like
mind.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't lie to
Well,
yourself.
it's not though. Like if you just were to show up and like face head on what probably the person who likes self growth is telling you to face,
Mm,
maybe you could be a better person. Maybe you could be the person that they see you as
oh
and not
yeah.
try to sabotage it. And that's where I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Mm,
The sabotage patterns that I see in the relationships where they're coming into counseling, they're coming in for couples therapy most of the time, or individual, most of the couples I see, they're learning the skills. They're reading the books. They're attending and they're doing their homework, but they can't seem to break out of that pattern because
uh,
there's like the two wolves inside of them. The one wolf is like, no, we can never let love in. We will not be intimate, and I don't want to be in an eye to
mm,
eye, mutual, mature, respectful
yeah.
relationship because then I have to be a grown up. Then I, whatever, don't have to be petty. Then I have to go to therapy. Then I have to change my family system. I have to
Yeah.
individuate even more. It costs a lot. Don't get me wrong. I
Mm,
see it. It costs a lot behind the scenes for people to change their unhealthy patterns,
oh, for sure.
but it's going to cost you even more in the other direction. You're going to get so far in a relationship and it's going to be like chutes and ladders and it's going to fall off. And then maybe the next one you get one step further and it's going to fall off.
Yep.
If you want it to continue to grow forward for both of you have to face the uncomfortable
Mm,
parts and not just pick someone who cosigns your bullshit or allows you to be whatever it is, like the Peter
yeah.
Pan in the relationship who never grows
Mm,
up. Over functioning, I was an over functioner. It's exhausting. We get tired of it. And it's like, you know what? No, you do the fucking dishes. You do this for once. I'm not doing this anymore. But you love to be. That chapter is over. That subchapter in our text is over. Now you will be doing that. And that's why I always caution women, if the co signing
yep.
of the bullshit is you're the overfunctioner, they're the underfunctioner, it will not last long term. Either you'll get
No.
so resentful he will leave. Usually men don't leave. They wait until it gets so bad that we leave. And then they're like, why would you do that? It's like, could you be less lazy? Like, could you just maybe do the work for once and like
I think it's. I
initiate?
think to not get
Yeah.
off track, it's
Yeah.
completely genetic because we're called cavemen for a reason. So why do we leave the cave?
Yeah.
This is our domain, right? Even
Yeah.
if we don't
Yep.
actually have control in it.
Yep.
The self sabotage always comes from that subconscious secondary gain being met somehow. Like,
Yes.
I'm going to tank this because I'm still getting my needs met in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially when I'm working with my betrayal couples,
Yes.
sometimes I can have that non offending spouse just like in the throes of like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why I'm not seeing movement. We've done the disclosure
Yep. Yep.
um, session, we've come with valid points, we've set a house constitution. Why won't they meet these needs?
Yep.
And I have to have the hard conversation because they're getting their needs met regardless.
Yes.
There's actually no bite left in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is you end up with someone that goes right back into that overworking mode of like, okay, well, I'll put this on my shoulders and I'll make this happen. That other person's recognizing, see, like if this is a group project, you'll do 95% of it and I'll sign my name on it.
Yeah.
Like, and so is it scary to say, well, this could potentially fracture the relationship and we can go our own way? Absolutely. But I'm more concerned about the person that tries to put themselves in the position of being solely responsible for the success or the failure of the relationship and ends up having a heart attack or a brain aneurysm and
Yeah.
dying. Because
Yeah.
that's the cold hard truth. Like maybe other therapists won't tell you that, but that's how this works out. Someone
Oh, the
all
body keeps the score
The body
for
keeps the
show.
score, and the body, here's a problem: the body uh, charges interest. So like you might be able to handle 4 years, 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
10 years of stress, chronic fatigue. But guess what? At some point in time, the unrealized gains are going to show up on that, and you're going to be hosed. Because then it's like, oh no, your heart is toast, your thyroid is toast, your kidneys are toast, and now you're going to have to do it somehow from also now being disabled in some way or dealing with chronic illness. So it's very important for us to have the conversation of that it's going to be hard either way. You get to choose your hard though. And the difficulty of having the honest conversation is exponentially less energy invested than when you have to do this by allowing someone to run rampant over your boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and not being heard. Because that level of difficulty is actually something that you can't even quantify.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the risk we run when we partner with somebody who does the co-signing. Then sometimes, like metaphorically, we're like, well, I don't want
Yeah.
to re-sign the lease. Like, I don't want a co-signer for this. I would like to terminate the contract. And they're like, come on, you signed it the first time. And you're like, I don't want to sign this lease again. We had the car for 3 years, right? We had the
Yeah.
relationship for 3 years. I want a new model. I want an upgrade. Like I want the heated seats. I want the heated and air conditioned seats. I want the thing where I move my foot and the trunk closes. Like life's changed since we first
Yeah.
co-signed that contract. And they're like, oh, but it's going to be whatever, more money. It's going to be I don't know if I want to sign the lease. It's like, okay, well, I'm moving forward with that, whether you are there or not. I'm putting you on notice. I'm not going to co-sign this anymore, and I need you to grow up. And I noticed that co-signing piece without both of them being adults happens a lot when the person not falls in love with necessarily, but believes more in the potential than the reality. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that people like,
Very
especially
well
depending
put.
on the age that you meet, if you're in college, obviously most people are not actualizing their potential that they will at 30 or 40. It's just not possible. Like they very well could at their college reunion be like, oh, I'm a
Yeah.
CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They're not going to have that at 18. So that's the caveat is like when you're young enough, ideally under 30, that the person is establishing a career, working towards a career. That's the decade for that in
Yep.
flux. If you see that in the person and they're telling you that's what I'm doing and they have the steps for it, they're not like, I'm just a SoundCloud rapper. And you're like, oh my God, you could be an engineer. They're like, I don't want to be that. I just want to be a SoundCloud rapper. You're like,
Yeah.
but you're so good at math. Let me do your resume for you. Like, that is a different thing. Don't do that. I'm not recommending that. That's co signing. That's your own shit you got to work
Oh
through in
yeah.
therapy. It's when you fall more in love with or stay longer for that cosign. The lease gets longer and
Yeah.
longer. It's like the 5-year engagement where it's like, oh, but this came up, or but this came up.
Yep.
If the potential is taking too long and it's eclipsing the reality, it's a decision you could make to not be in the relationship anymore. And sometimes when the potential is realized and it's actualized, the version of the person who actualizes it is not somebody you'd even want to be with if you met them today. And that's a question I tell my couples to ask themselves. If you met today, would you pick each other? And some of them would not. And I'm not saying that they immediately break up if they say yes or no. It gives them data to understand, no, I wouldn't, but maybe it's because it would require me to grow. Or no, I wouldn't
Yeah.
because I would want things to be different or I'd want you to treat me differently. It doesn't always mean, no, I wouldn't, let's break up. But some couples, it's like, no, I literally would want nothing to do with you. I
Yeah.
would pick a completely different life than what we have. And the only reason, in fact, that we have this life is because whatever, I thought it would get better. I thought things would change. I thought I could trust your word. You have to be very mindful what you're co-signing.
Yeah.
And if your adult self, if you can tune into this episode's filmed in 2024, but like tune into today, read the calendar, today's self as an adult, as a grown up in your body, would you put up with what you are in the relationship? And that's not tolerating. Tolerating is to interact with and still have respect for. Tolerance is a goal in a relationship. You're not going to love everything your partner does. Can you at least tolerate it?
Yeah.
That's different than I feel like I'm putting up with them. And I know I had gotten to the point in my relationship where it was like, I can't do this. I literally can't spend the rest of my life with somebody who does this. And I would say it out loud because I was past the point of no return. I'm just like, I've tried everything. Like, I can't be with somebody who this. I don't want this for the rest of my life. I don't want my child dating someone like this. And then I was like, okay, time to call it. I'm not re-signing this lease. Too much has been said and too much has not grown in the same direction for it to even make sense to re-sign the lease. So before you really get involved with somebody in the co-signing, if your life were a silent movie, what would it show you? Not what do they promise you, not what do they tell you is going to happen. Silent movie. Look back at whatever, however long you've been with them or what last 6 months, what have you. What does it actually tell you about who they are as a person and their ethos and what they see the world as? That is good data for you to decide whether or not to stay. If you want to keep your growth on hold, by all means. Everybody has the right to be unhappily married. I firmly believe that. But that's usually not why people get married, is to be miserable. And is it like, do you want to suffer for 50 years and then you have a 50-year marriage for what? That's not a goal. Like, great, you were married for 50 years and you hated them for 40 of it. Look at the chronic health conditions you have. Like, no, and you're right, it does charge interest. Your body for sure charges interest.
Yeah, that's stuff that you don't get back. It's not you don't just like pay a subscription and get over that chronic fatigue or pain. Like it shows up in a different way. Something just like listening to you talk, something that's I learned this a long time ago when I was trying to play and get on the poker circuit and all that jazz, but there's a saying that really helped me become a better player, which is you play the hands that you are dealt, not the hands that you want.
Yes.
And so what ends up happening though is very often you can have someone who has a well of empathy that finds some other person and they want so badly the end potential of that individual, like what
Yep.
you are capable of. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're out there and you're in this position, I just want you to hear this. No matter how bad you want something better for someone else, if they don't identify with it,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to make the movement. And it's not
No.
about you didn't wish hard enough.
No, it's a projective desire that you would do that if you were in their position.
Correct. If they have no intrinsic desire for that change to happen, you're literally setting yourself up for a different type of self sabotage, a
Yep.
perpetual state where you're always unhappy and unfulfilled and feeling like you lack influence because you've attached yourself to someone who doesn't have the same desire for themselves.
Yes.
Like,
And
and it's heartbreaking. I've been in that relationship. I ended up watching a person that I loved dearly go down a road of addiction, completely change the trajectory of her life. It did not matter how much I cared for this individual, because at the end of the day, I had to be on my knees and recognize she doesn't want that for herself right now.
mm-hmm.
Like, she has to have her never again moment, and all I'm doing is bubble wrapping her in that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't wish to also co-sign. I don't want her to be an accomplice in the
No,
crime against herself because
exactly.
I won't remove myself.
And it's so hard to watch someone you love go down that path.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
one of the reasons why it's so heartbreaking to watch is because if you're the person watching it and you were also the person envisioning what life could have been if they only whatever took your
Mm,
advice, got help, read the book, went to therapy, what have
yeah.
you. And let's just say for argument's sake, you're right. If the person that you are in question, if the person in question did all the stuff that you saw on their
Mm,
behalf, or someone told them on their behalf, hey, this would really benefit you, God himself could come down, or herself, whatever you believe in, could come down and be like,
yeah.
hey, follow this 9-step plan and this is who you'll be. Some people will
Yeah.
still go, okay, and throw it away because they
Oh,
don't
dude.
want to face it. And it's so hard to watch someone make
Mm,
decisions that you know and they
yeah.
know deep down are not in their best interest and create the undoing of the
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And it's normal, doesn't mean you stay there, but it's normal to go
Mm-mm.
inward and ask. Human behavior is usually what the heck is wrong with them, and then when
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any answers for that, we go inward of what the heck is wrong with me. Women
Absolutely.
sometimes start with that second question first. It's the most freeing but painful thing at the same time, personally, that even I've been through, where
Mm-hmm.
you watch somebody do that and blow up their whole life, and you're the collateral damage, and then you're
Mm,
just like, but this wasn't about me. There's nothing I could have done, truly, more or less of, to
mm,
prevent this from happening because their choice is to self sabotage with others as collateral damage,
yeah.
even if it's their family. Lets me know, or lets the observer know, the person who's receiving
Yeah.
that self sabotage, it's not about you. They clearly have so
Mm,
much unresolved, whatever it is, to
yeah.
work through, or lack of insight as to why they self sabotage when things go well. You can listen to our episode
Mm-hmm.
about that. That it doesn't matter who they take down with them because they're only thinking of themselves to a level that's
Mm,
so unhealthy they can't even consider what they're doing would hurt another person, and
yeah.
top of the list would be hurting them. And that's the hardest part about watching
Mm,
somebody self-destruct, that you can't stop it, you can't prevent it. As
no.
a parent, we know this too. You can safeguard so much, we can
Mm-hmm.
childproof, but they still get boo-boos and bruises, and
Oh,
they
absolutely.
find ways to get hurt themselves. Not, like you're not attending to them, but they
Yeah.
find ways to hurt themselves that you're like, how did you even, what, like the childproofing somehow made it less safe? Like, what is this? Like, you try, but you can't proof the
Nope.
relationship for every hardship. And that's where I tell people, like,
Mm,
don't put your growth on hold. Don't not
mhm,
go to therapy, don't not have that insight, because if you're with somebody
mm,
where inevitably they're going to self-destruct no matter what you do, no matter how great your influence could be, you don't want to have your growth be on hold, that when that does happen, you do go inward and
mm,
go, I made them whatever it was, drink, cheat,
mm,
step out, quit their job. No, everybody has agency, and every
mhm.
adult is supposed to be
Yeah,
individuated and supposed to have autonomy in their life and make their own choices. We at best have some influence depending on the role that we have, but we do not
for
have
sure.
control over another person. And that's where I
No.
recommend people, if you're going through this and you're like, oh my God, I put my growth on hold for
Mhm.
somebody, or I am in a relationship where I'm co-signing it and I want it to
Yeah.
change. You co-signing it is not going to help them change. Sometimes what causes them to change is leaving. And I'm not saying leave with the hopes of they're going to, but like
No.
sometimes that somebody has to suffer a loss so great,
Mm-hmm.
their never again moment, for them to actually change. And the longer you stay, if you safeguard them
Mm-hmm.
from that, you're not doing them any favors. In fact, you're doing yourself a disservice. Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewireyourrelationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
If you do your own work, if you continue to grow, then yeah, you're going to watch how naturally you start moving forward in the current mutual journey that you're on. But you want to give them something to chase, because if you don't, then what you're doing is you're telling them you don't have to change either. Like, I'll stay stagnant and then this will be comfortable enough. And it's never. Like, I always tell people, you cannot starve yourself enough to keep
Right.
satiating a endless appetite, right?
Yep.
So you're going to continue to carve parts off of you and feed them to the other, and recognize that there's not ever going to be a level of satisfaction.
Mm-mm.
There's just going to be more, more, more. And that's where
Never enough.
you've got to realize, like, I have to stop in some cases raising a toddler in this adult relationship,
Bingo.
where it's like, well, no, I'm going to let you down. There's going to be times I do things wrong. I'm not always going to be able to hold you, right? But it's interesting when we pay attention to, in some of these really committed relationships, one partner can regress into a very young version of themselves,
Yes.
where it's almost like you found a tremendous amount of like confidence in this person. They were, I don't know, they had a lot of competence in what they were doing, and then all of a sudden they got in this committed relationship, and they completely regress to like, you're their emotional containment, right? And we have to pay attention, because there is like this, the consuming mother archetype,
Yes.
that
Yes.
basically what can happen is, sometimes for men, they're taught that as soon as that female companion comes around, she will be the containment for all of my emotions. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to process my emotions. She's supposed to hold them for me. She's supposed to be
And she'll forgive
responsible.
everything, like my
Exactly.
mommy
Like,
did.
I actually don't have the power to offend you, or I
Yeah.
don't have the power to disappoint you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's you being crazy. And that's why, like, a lot of guys will laugh when I say this. I was like, normally behind a crazy bitch is a man who pushed her that way. Like
100%. We don't
like
go crazy for no fucking reason. Thank you for saying it. Yeah, we don't just off the chain, like, for no reason be like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna snap. Like, snapped?
and I'm not
There's a character behind that. They didn't just go on snapped on TLC for no reason. Somebody pushed them to
correct.
snap.
And I'm telling you, there may be some crazy women out there that didn't need a
Okay,
nudge at
there's
all.
crazy.
Okay, but
There's people who are unhinged by their own doing. That's not what we're talking about.
yes,
Women or men aside.
yeah, it is interesting that it gets stuck in that stereotype, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is where it's like, man, one one significant other got to take the position of, I'm responsible for nothing. The other one's leveraged with being responsible for everything. And then we're surprised that that one that's responsible for everything is miserable, is short,
Resentful,
is,
contemptuous.
yeah, I mean, why not? Like, what other outlet do they have? You've actually written a position, you gave them a role. This is the only role they can play. So I
Mm-hmm.
always love when I hear men talk about, like, oh, our marriage started out and it was so wonderful, and then she just became this conniving bitch and all this. It's like, okay, let's walk
So
through that. How did
controlling.
that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, we never did what she wanted. We did what I wanted, and then I would tell her she needed to be on a budget, but then I was buying fishing poles, and then like, it's in her, and you're sitting there and you go like, oh, so she's crazy for not trusting you.
Wild.
she's crazy for feeling like she is never being prioritized. Like, or when she is prioritized, it's out of levels of convenience. You know,
Or there's something to it. Well, I went golfing and I got drunk, so now I'm in the mood. It's like, no, I'm not in the mood just because you get home and you want to do that. Or, oh, I'll be super nice. And it's like, well, what do you really want? And that's not a feeling, like you're saying,
no,
that the guys necessarily are aware of, because if they came from a family where they're like a mama's boy
yeah,
and their mom did everything for them and unconditional love forgave them for everything, do not expect unconditional love the same way a parent
mm-hmm,
could give a child in your adult romantic relationships.
mm-hmm,
Adult romantic love has conditions. It's not unconditional. It's
yeah,
not you get to treat me however you want and I will always stay and forgive.
mm,
Unfortunately,
yep,
the generations that came before us either had to stay
mm,
because they had no other option. So it indirectly, or they kind of
yeah,
rationalized it to themselves like, you model, you stick together through thick and thin. There are some things that you should not stick through. There are some things that are external, a job loss, let's say, a
yeah,
loss of a parent, you go through a miscarriage, you fall on hard times,
mm,
something happened. Like those are the
yeah,
ups and downs or thick and thin to stick through. And it's not
for
just like,
sure,
oh, well, you lost your job, I'm leaving you. If you lost your job because you have a raging drinking problem that causes other
yep,
problems, that's a different story. You could leave
for
someone for
sure,
that, but you have to look at, are these hardships or tough times
mm,
external? Are they something external to the relationship that the dyad is still strong? Or the hard times caused by one
yeah,
person in the dyad who typically, based on the mama's boy complex, does not take responsibility? Then the other partner has appropriate emotional reactions to it. And the person then goes, you're being so controlling. Why can't you just be chill?
mm,
Why? You feeling controlled by me is your choice to interpret
yeah,
my asking you to be a responsible adult. It's not me controlling you. You feeling
yep,
controlled is not me controlling you, it's your interpretation. And I think
mm,
that's a good delineation for people to hear, because they're in those relationships
yeah,
where they have the guy who's like, she was so chill in the beginning. You mean before life really got real and we had
yeah,
a family and kids and a house and bills and what have? Yeah, I was more chill. I was.
yeah,
And then I snapped because I was the one that was doing it all. And you were the one that's like, let's just be chill. Let's enjoy it. Life is meant to be enjoyed after the work is done. Life
yeah,
is not just a series of fun camp where you have no responsibilities and someone comes in to rescue you. And that's
mm-hmm,
where a lot of the guys who need that growth still,
yeah,
and that they want this whatever archetype, but they're picking the girl
mm-hmm,
who doesn't have that yet, we'll just call it that
yeah,
generally. That's also their work to do. And ironically, if you
yep,
look up like imago therapy, it's usually the people that they're like, I want this chill whatever, that is the
mm,
antithesis of their mom, but they end up picking somebody like their mom because of imago
yeah,
work. We're familiar to you, the driven, the
mm,
structure, the whatever, cosigns without us even realizing, and
yep,
allows you to be the Peter Pan little boy who never
mm-hmm,
grows up. And vice versa, there's the
mm-hmm,
female archetype where it's like we've talked about the Cinderella complex,
yep,
somebody come in to save me, somebody come in to rescue me. And
mm-hmm,
maybe they're, you know, maybe their dad, they want somebody who is
mm,
like giving them structure or giving them what have you, kind of being a
yeah,
pseudo parent. But and they either pick that and it doesn't work, or they pick some guy who like can't lead them. It's just all a mess. Like being unconscious when you pick your
mm,
romantic partner and picking it from a wounded place doesn't
absolutely.
set you up to have a healthy adult relationship. It sets you up to recreate your childhood wounds.
Yeah, the phrasing that I keep using with my clients is it's you're like it's the toxic security blankets. Like
Yep.
I don't necessarily want to pick the security blanket based off of the toxicity that was handed to me in the
Mhm.
past.
Mhm.
But see, that's what happens. That's why I
Mhm.
love Imagos, because there's a familiarity
Yep.
concept that's not really shared in other modalities, but
Mhm.
you will go to what feels familiar. Doesn't mean that it's not painful, doesn't
It
mean
doesn't
that
mean
it's
it's
not
healthy either.
stressful.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Mhm.
But see, that's the problem is it's like a tractor beam
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, I'm looking, but like, oh, so you found that the guy that was having the bar fights and was always like fighting everyone ends up not being emotionally stable when you get him behind a closed door.
I'm
Like,
shocked.
but why did you? Oh, well, but it
I thought I could
projected
I
safety.
thought I could fix him.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even think it goes that deep. I think it's just like, oh no, he'll be a provider.
Or
I don't know.
protector.
I don't think that that's actually
Like
what's
he's
going to
not going to
happen.
turn that violence on you.
Exactly.
But that's where I'm saying we feel like we're the chosen ones or
Hmm.
we're the special exception. Who doesn't like feeling special? Come on. All of us do to
I
some
love
degree.
being special.
I love being special. And so if you find somebody who's like, I love being special, and I read this in a book, and this will blow most women's minds, so buckle up. If you're not already sitting down or pulled over, I suggest you do both at the same time. When it's called Necessary Losses by Judith Viors, shout out to Judith, she's a homie. She talks about this maternal nurturing instinct. This
Mm,
is not to say that all women are meant to have kids. I'm not going down that path. What I'm
no.
saying is for women who resonate with having a nurturing
Mm,
instinct. I hold brunches for my friends. I do this, right? There's more of
yeah.
that tend and befriend. When you
Mm,
partner with a man without, when you don't have kids, it's just like you in the partnership, there is a higher
mm,
likelihood that you will channel and turn toward your partner in that maternal nurturing, let me make your lunch,
mm,
let me buy you, or not buy you necessarily, but like let me fix your coffee, let me this, because part of it is I want you to do that for me, so I'm subconsciously
yeah.
modeling. The other part is I'm momming you because that maternal urge
Mm,
has connected, because evolutionarily my brain is like, ping could be a partner, ping could be a partner. And there's
mm,
roles that we play in relationships also, right? The
yeah.
third leg of this, based on our imago, who nurtured whom in
Mm,
your parents' marital relationship, what was modeled to you as the norm, who did what for whom. So you mix all that together, we're channeling, we're nurturing, what have you, then you get a dog. Then you have a baby. Then
yeah.
actual things that need your
Hmm.
attention to that level, that are nonverbal, that need you to decipher their
Yeah.
needs and cues, and with babies can't even hold their neck up without you. The husband becomes optional at minimum for the first 3 months,
Mm,
sometimes longer, especially with a human child, because
yeah.
this thing needs me. And I love, as a woman, being needed in a way. This is what the book's saying. I love being
Hmm.
needed in a way that is that nonverbal, only I know you, I can attune to you. You got me here. Thanks for either
Hmm.
buying it or creating it. I don't need you anymore. And a lot of the relationships, she was saying, a lot of marriages don't survive, or on such rocky terms, which you know from the Gottman research
Hmm.
too, after having children, because the husband is no longer the child. The husband is no longer the infant or getting that maternal attention. Now the
Yeah.
child is. And it's not uncommon for husbands to feel envious. I've worked with husbands that are like, I don't know, I feel jealous and envious of my baby
Oh,
who's 4 weeks
absolutely.
old. Like, what? And I'm like, because it's about you're not getting nurtured anymore. And you're watching, not only are you not getting it, you're watching somebody else receive what you used to
Yeah.
receive, and you're not really purposeful in the same way that a mom is. Your boobs aren't working to keep them alive, etc. And so some men, instead of leaning in and saying, how can I help, how can I hold you while you hold our child, they go get held elsewhere, so to speak,
Hmm.
because they can't tolerate not being the center of attention or the center of affection. So that
I mean,
book
probably
really,
the
yeah,
breakthrough points that I've had with men on my side is
yeah,
waking them up to like, do you realize you're in this like pseudo competition with your child?
yep.
Because that's why you are acting and behaving the way you are, is you
It's
see
a
yourself.
it's a it's a re imagining, I guess. It's probably not the right word, but it's
Mm,
basically you're redoing the Oedipal or electric complex from childhood. You want to be with one parent and you want to kill off the other parent, obviously based on mythology. Please don't really do this. Well, I want to be close to mommy, or I want to be close to daddy, but they're a threat. You're redoing that with your own child and your wife and your
mm,
family that you've created, the family that came from you. Obviously, if you're awake to it, you can interrupt the cycle and understand it's not going to be about you anymore. But the women who are usually drawn to the underfunctioners and who like that maternal nurturing
hmm.
instinct don't really see it until, if it is
Yeah.
embodied in an actual child, they don't see how much that comes out. Like I
Hmm.
said, if the husband's not growth on hold, they're actually doing the work, or the male is actually doing the work and growing
Yeah.
with them, you guys can get through that. Those are the couples who do get past those tough years and in 10, 20 years go, gosh, remember that first year was so hard. I'm so glad we got through
Mm,
it. I'm so glad we were able to go to counseling, with
yeah.
Adam and work through it. And then there's other couples that are like, no, if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to go get it elsewhere. And then when you start giving it to me again, maybe I'll lean more into you. But at that point, trust is broken. A woman never
Yeah.
forgets how she's treated during pregnancy and postpartum. And if you make her feel like she has another baby to raise, I'm sorry, we won't pick you. You're going to become like, you're a grown adult. You should be able to handle it for yourself. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying be mean and ruthless. This is not the time for me to be doting on you. This is the time for you to be doting on me. You
Mm,
hold me, I hold the baby. Like that's the hierarchy of the Russian
yeah.
nesting dolls of the family order, especially in the new postpartum time. So I'm glad we're bringing this up, because that is when couple growth goes on
Mm.
hold. When you have a baby, it's not going to be date nights. It's not
And
going to
I'll
be all
actually
that
like
stuff.
I'll push back a little bit. I
Yeah,
think that's like the way that we have to conceptualize what growth looks like during that time. Like like,
So
because
true.
there's so many times that I'll sit down with men that it's like, oh, we're supposed to go on like a holding pattern, right?
Right.
Or like this is complacency, or there's not a lot
Mm,
that's required of me, right? And I don't think that that's actually the best position for you to move into, because you're never going to move out of that level of complacency as time goes on. And I
yeah.
think that's why you see a lot of the disconnected dads, the disconnected husbands. The toxicity of that experience is, you'll have a woman that will find out, well, wait a second, I'm in this alone, so I'm going to start planning my life alone. And then you have a husband that's like, okay, so I just bring home the money, or I'm the janitor, or whatever it is, whatever role I'm going to play. That's what I'll do. So I'll also show up in a compromised capacity for this, where it's like, why can't, like, I understand we work long days, we do stuff, like, great, if you're the breadwinner of the house, you're the breadwinner of the house, but you're telling me you can't bring food home, or you can't make sure that there's milk in the fridge, or
Hmm.
you can't show up in these other ways. Wait a second, if you know that you're not going to be connecting with your wife because she has to pump, or the baby's gone crazy, or she needs to nap, and like, you're telling me you're incapable of picking up a vacuum or a broom, you have no way of emptying the trash, like, there are ways that, this is where I tell guys, like, you're going to have to mine your own satisfaction. And it's
Yes.
not just plugging on to freaking Xbox and
No.
going away. And guys, I have an Xbox Live account. I still love to play video games, but again, in a healthy freaking capacity, where it's like, there's ways of, like, dude, open your eyes. You can see things that need to be taken care of. That's how you're going to support your wife. You're not
Hmm.
going to have the gourmet aspect of being able to take her out to a steak dinner, wine or diner, and then put her to bed. It's probably not going to happen right now. The
Hmm.
days are coming. And
Yeah.
guess what? I bet you money a wife that feels safe, or a significant other that feels safe, secure, grounded in the relationship, they actually want that. They just
Yeah.
don't know how to get there because they're so freaking tired. And this
Yes.
baby just wrecked the playground on the way out, and the boobs are
Yes.
tender.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like,
It's not the season for it. It doesn't mean the
it's
desire's not there, but it's not the season
exactly.
to act on the desire. And I think that's where, like, sometimes the psychological immaturity takes the driver's seat rather than the patience and
Mm-hmm.
the temperance of, this is a season in a 20-year
Yep.
career, right? Like, let's look at law or our careers, right? We had to get 3,000 hours
Yeah.
minimum, and the BBS is not on time with things. So it's even longer than that. Then you become, or so you get your traineeship, then you become an associate,
Mm-hmm.
then you become licensed, then you have to do CEUs every 2 years, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough in those first few years in the beginning,
Oh,
especially.
absolutely.
Then you reach kind of a not a plateau in a bad way, but you're like, I climbed the mountain, like, we're good. And then anything from there is growth and character development, what have
Exactly.
you. You have the license, right? Unless
Mm-hmm.
you choose to not renew it. When you're in those first few years of a relationship, or first year, limerence, and we're this and we're that, it's just the two of
Mm,
you. It is so much more likely you'll feel that way if it's just a dyad and there's nothing triangulating or acting upon that dual force. When you
yeah.
get a dog, or when you have intrusive
Mm-hmm.
in-laws, or when there's substance use or video games, or narcotizing as a mistress, so to speak, or a real child, when two
Yeah.
becomes three in whatever sense, then there's going to feel like there's a vying, there's a competition, there's an envy and a jealousy. And when it comes to expanding the family system, it's, I can be patient.
Mm,
Could I wait? How long have I been with this partner? Could I wait 3 to 6 months minimum?
yep.
Let's just say conservatively, 3 to 6 months for them to feel like they just had their shit rocked. Okay, like, we're a new person. We just had a human being come out of us. Can we have a little break, please, from all of the other stuff? Then, like you're saying, the desire is usually there. If it's not, that's a different episode. But
Hmm.
if your desire is there for the both of you, you have to arrive at, we are going to put this style of date night on hold in the
Yeah.
interim, but we can still have the connection once the baby goes down to sleep. If you don't have a baby with colic, or one that at
Hmm.
least sleeps through the night, hey, I realize this, but can I join you on your walk? Can we chat about how things are going? Can I wash your pump parts? There are still ways to be a partner in that new postpartum period or during raising children. But if couples expect it to go back to what it looked like when
No.
it was just the two of you, and date nights when it was just the two of you will continue to feel slighted, and it will further position you in adult parent who's trying to
Hmm.
explain, no, we can't stay up 30 minutes late past our bedtime. No, we can't have ice cream before dinner. No, we can't have just fun anymore, because there's real life. So if you can meet somewhat closer to being in the middle, you can get to that
And how,
patient
yeah, and
place.
how do you
Yes.
get to that?
Yes.
That actually means that grace has to be present in the
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
Because see, that's the other aspect is a lot of times these relationships have been built on like token economies.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a transactional nature, and then all of a sudden a kid shows up, and you recognize that no longer works. Because guess what? Someone's going to go past due.
Mm-hmm.
Like some things I wake up to, like the guys that I work with, is like intimacy might look different. Instead of like being able to ravish her in bed, it might be like, hey, I drew you a bath, I lit your favorite candle, I
Yeah.
handed you a White Claw. I
Yeah.
need you to just go to like
Chill.
unplug.
Yeah.
I got the baby monitor. And then
Yeah.
guess what? I know you're going to get out of bed. You're going to get in or get out of the
Yeah. Yeah.
tub, get into
Yeah.
bed. You're going to go sleep. And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be it. That's the way you get to show up. But this is
Mm-hmm.
where we also we're splitting the selfishnesses, right? Like, well, I want my cookie too.
Mm-hmm.
So like I did that. So that means, you can break off a little piece for me. Like, so this is that whole dynamic of like, well, okay, she's going to go back into there's no safety and security.
Exactly.
The baby, everything, and this is by design. Like baby is innocent in this, but yes, the baby is always asking for something because they
Sure.
cannot meet their own needs. The
Sure.
worst thing though is for you to now be a partner in this process with them and saying, well, also I can't meet my own needs.
Yeah, I'm the baby.
Yeah.
Why can't you be with me?
I-
Because you're a grown adult.
Grown
You're a
ass.
grown adult. And I'm sorry that you weren't mothered correctly at some point properly to have
Mm.
internalized the ability to meet your own needs, and you regress when this happens. But you need to go to therapy, and you need to work on that if you do end up wanting to have that
Yeah.
dyad become a triad and then still have the dyad because the kid gets older. Like we've talked about in other episodes, when you're done with parenting is far more active when
Yeah.
the kids are young than when they're older. There's a
Mhm.
different level of parenting, but you're not running around chasing them
Correct.
ideally. That you want to be able to look at your partner if you want that long-term relationship, not put your growth on hold and go, there's seasons for it, but you look and go, aren't we so glad that we got
Yeah.
through this? Gosh, that was tough, but thanks for having my back and thanks for meeting my needs in another way. And the fact that you can
Mhm.
demonstrate, I can meet your needs, the drawing the bath, the going to bed, that recharges you. It's less about instant gratification and it's more about delayed gratification. It's an investment in your relationship when you're doing for the other, not expecting something immediately or at all in return.
Mhm.
That's what I think about that.
No, I mean, mic drop.
Yeah. So don't put your growth on hold
Nope.
at all. And if you are in a season where somebody is refusing to grow with you and they might be like sabotaging your growth, because deep down they know, like, oh, if this person grows, like they're going to look back eventually. I remember my dad telling me this, and then we can do our question at the end. My dad telling me this when I was a teenager. He's like, you're like dating guys and then you're continuing to like grow and go to school and what have you. And they're just like complacent here. And you like look back one day, you're like, are you going to join me? And they're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to keep going. Right. And then we would break up. And that pattern has persisted into adulthood. And I do think there's merit in
Absolutely.
learning what you have to learn in those partnerships. And I also think there's even more merit in like leave when it's time to go. Do not overstay your welcome in a relationship that would cost you your own self-growth or your own self-actualization. That would be the advice.
Trust them. Trust what they say.
Yep.
Like you don't actually have to overthink this. You don't have to go Inception level 4 levels deep.
Yeah.
If what they keep communicating to you is I don't want to, they mean it.
Yeah. Look at their actions, not just their words.
No, I always tell, especially my clients that I work with in betrayal, like behaviors are 100 times better to receive than words. Because that tells us at the most honest what that person is willing to do, desiring to do, has a capacity to do. Because I do believe that not, even villains, not every villain wishes to be the worst villain. I think some people have like lacks of capacity.
Sure.
For sure they would love to do that. They just don't have the ability to lean into the process. It's not a desire for them. Again, just because you know that they're intelligent enough to be able to master it doesn't mean crap if the person doesn't want it for themselves. And so trust them and then allow yourself to move where you need to move.
Yep. Let your trust in yourself be the strongest trust that guides you into trusting what they do, not just what they say.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, let me we're going to switch into the host hot seat. This is a good question that we only briefly got to know right before the episode started. So I literally got so heated during this episode I forgot it, but I found it. Okay. If you could use a time machine, Would you rather have one that only goes back in time or only goes forward in time?
Are you going to jump on this one?
I hate this question because I want both, but I have to pick because it is a binary question. I'm going to tune in and I'm going to.
Oh.
I have an argument for both. Off the cuff, if I picked one that only went backward, my curiosity would be, would it change the trajectory of my life when I came back to the time? And if same would go the other, like the remote from Click, if I only went forward, would that greatly influence in this game of life? Like I fast forward 20 years from now, I see what my life looks like. Would that mess up the fate, or would it just be like I fast forward, I see it as like confirmation that I'm on the right track, and then I come back like Men in Black pen, I have no a priori knowledge of what just happened except a feeling, kind of like hypnosis. So that's like my active processing. I don't have an answer yet, but I want to hear yours and then I might arrive at it. So right now I'm mixed.
Well, so the way that I internalize the question, I'm going to go off of the thought process that I believe. So if I had a time machine and it either went forward or it went backwards, it doesn't come back to the present. So I have to like choose.
Oh shit! Okay.
Like I'm choosing. Okay, do I go forward 20 years or do I go back 20 years?
Forward. 100%.
Is that 100%? No. Well, no. Let me roll into. Is that because I have this question? Are you saying forward based off the fact that you have a child now and you wouldn't want to, like, you wouldn't want to potentially alter their existence? Is that why you? Because like I can feel that as a parent, I'm like, oh man, like I love Lorelai, so I wouldn't want to go backwards in any way that. But so like I just want to like weigh that because it's like is it because of that, or is it because like, oh no, I don't want to relive high school again?
It's that. It's all the pain.
Okay. All right.
Okay. In the off the cuff split second when I was just my full self answering that, not mother, it was not about Atlas at all. It was truly about, I do not want to go back and relive all the bullshit that got me to this point. I'm glad I'm here, but fuck no, would I not want to relive any of that? That's why I would pick future, because I think I've learned a lot of lessons, not everything, but like I told you, my astrology stuff, I'm about to clear some shit out that's been a 15-year pattern. Like, your girl is going to be on fire starting in December with all the growth. So, like, let's do this. Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
I would way rather pick the future because the past, love the lesson.
Dude, it would be wonderful if like it just like spins down and you're like, oh, this my house?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like where's the jet? That's my jet.
Yeah, like, no, that's a great way. I'm so glad you interpreted it that way. That let me think about it.
Because that would be the worry that I'd have is like, okay, so you can go backwards, you can go forward, but it's going to
would it undo or solidify? Yeah.
Yeah, man. No,
what would you pick?
I think I'd go forward because it's funny. I have a friend that he never finished it, but he did a screenwrite on something similar to this, and the idea was that the protagonist went backwards, the machine broke, and now you have to hit all the milestones you hit before to get back to where you were. So like imagine the pressure of like, dude, I have to make this moment happen because that's the moment I meet her to get married or to start dating, and we have to hit it on this to then get this child. Like the level of inner turmoil of like how you. I was like, when he was explaining the premise, I was having an anxiety attack.
I am going to.
I was like, no, there's a depth there that like I can't, because that would
like
just be
Twilight Zone.
So yeah, like just think how we have stumbled through life to this moment to here because we never had set outcomes. What if I had to have set outcomes because I didn't want to live a different life? That would be frigging terrifying.
Oh my God. Cancel my day. Oh my God. I just had therapy before this. Now I have to go back.
Well, this is work, God. So it's now tax deductible. And so,
wow, that is yes. Okay, yeah. No, I definitely would not go back to the past. If I had to pick, I would pick the ability to go to the future.
Absolutely. Well, the future I think is a safer one, but I would still like, part of me is like, man, I don't know if I'd want to miss out on like the next 10 years of my
Yeah,
kid's
I
life.
wouldn't do the remote
No,
from
no,
click
no.
where I would skip it.
Yeah. So like, but it's just an
Yeah.
interesting thought process.
This is a great one. Yeah, I would, if you are listening to this and you have a strongly held belief in either direction, we would love to hear it,
I would love
these
to.
are thinkers. Like that's just
Yeah.
No, I would want the ability to go in the future, because let's say it was you go in the future and you can come back, I wouldn't know how I got there. If I picked
Correct.
a random moment 15 or 20 years from
Yeah.
now, I wouldn't know how I got there. It would mostly just give me hope.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, depending on what the situation was, it would, if I'm on the path that I'm on though, and you know what I think is going to end up happening, I wouldn't be afraid to see the future. And if anything, I'd be like, okay. And because I have a pretty good head on my shoulders to be like, even if this shitty thing happened, like we joked about off air, I'm like, it's just such good character development content. Like at this point in my life, God just works through me for like, and I'm sorry you can't keep them, but it's going to make you really whatever. I'm like, okay, fine. Like I won't get too attached. I would be like, there's a reason. Like in the future, if it were or weren't the way I wanted or what I thought I wanted now, it's for a purpose. And I would come back in here with like, that's like kind of, you know, transcendental meditation or manifesting. I would pick that because it's more similar to that. And I already practiced those, rather than you couldn't pay me $10 million to go relive the last, because you'd lose out on the time. I don't want to lose out. I already lost those. No. Case in point. No, thank you. That's yucky. I'm gonna go cry now and take a shower. Oh God. How could you make me think that? Now I have to sit down.
It was wonderful to be able to sit down with you all and have this moment.
Well, it was a great podcast while it lasted. Thanks, Adam. I quit. Like,
all right.
No, that was so good. Oh my gosh. I'm going to ask my clients that every day today, or every session today.
Oh yeah. No, that would be one to like break that one apart. Which one would you do? If you knew, like, because then also I feel like it also makes all the things we took for granted in the past way more valuable, because it's like, dude, if you don't hit the same ones, you don't get the same places.
True.
Like, that's
true. I love it.
The fragility of life.
Yeah, let us know. Email us or DM us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I need to go walk that one off. But thank you for listening to this episode. If you liked it, aside from us blowing your mind at the end, sorry, but also you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, you're welcome. Let us know what you liked about it, and if you want us to talk about it more, and if you ever have ideas, DM us.
We're always here.
Happy to dive in. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.